Imagine a single piece of evidence sitting in a cold storage locker for over 3 decades, an envelope. On the surface, it's just a paper. But this envelope held a secret, a microscope clue left behind by a man who thought he was smarter than everyone.
Blood on the grass won't wash away. Undetected footprints hidden in the mud.
In 1990, a killer did something so arrogant it almost hard to believe. He sent a letter to a local newspaper, packed with intimate details about a murder he committed. It was a taunt, a way to mock the police who were hunting for him. But with every word he wrote, and with the simple act of sealing the envelope, he was setting a trap for himself. He couldn't have possibly known the future science would turn his own words and his own saliva into the very key that would solve a 34-year-old mystery. This is a story of how a killer's ego became his own downfall, and how the ghost of his victim, a young mother named Anna Kane, would finally get a name for her murderer. Imagine a single piece of evidence sitting in a cold storage locker for over 3 decades, an envelope. On the surface, it's just a paper. But this envelope held a secret, a microscope clue left behind by a man who thought he was smarter than everyone. He believed he committed the perfect crime. And for 34 long years, it looked like he had, but he had made one crucial mistake. He licked the envelope, and in that one careless act, he mailed his own DNA directly to the authorities. Our story starts on a grim Sunday morning, October 23rd, 1988, in the woods of Perry Township, Pennsylvania. A passerby discovered the body of a young woman, dumped alongside the quiet Ontalena Trail. She was identified as 26-year-old Anna Jean Kane, a mother of three who recently moved to the area. The autopsy revealed a brutal truth. She had been beaten and then strangled to death. Investigators knew right away that this wooded trail wasn't where she was killed. She'd been left there. The police gathered every piece of evidence they could, carefully preserving her clothing, which they knew might hold microscopic clues, and it did. Analysis found the DNA of an unknown male on several items, but in 1988, the technology was still in its early days. They had a genetic fingerprint, but no way to match it to a person unless they already had a suspect. The DNA was a clue that led absolutely nowhere. Her family was shattered. Her children were left without a mother, their family without answers. As the investigation stretched on, leads dried up with no new information. Anna Kane's murder became one of Berks County's most haunting cold cases. The file stayed open, but the trail went silent. For the public, the story faded from the headlines, but for one person, the story was far from over. More than a year after Anna's murder in early 1990, the Reading Eagle newspaper ran a front-page story on the cold case, hoping to shake loose a new lead. It worked, but not how anyone imagined. Soon after, a letter showed up at the newspaper office signed simply, "A concerned citizen." This wasn't some helpful tip. This letter was filled with numerous intimate details about the homicide. Facts that had never been made public, and only the killer could have known. It was a chilling, arrogant taunt. The author was playing with the police, practically bragging about what he'd done. It was crystal clear to investigators that whoever wrote this letter was the man they'd been hunting for. But the killer's ego got the best of him. To send his poison pen letter, he had to put it in an envelope, and to seal it, he licked the flap. In that moment, he left his unique biological signature on the most important piece of evidence in the case. Investigators tested the saliva, and the results were a bombshell. The DNA from the envelope was a perfect match to the unknown male DNA found on Anna Kane's clothing. They had him. The letter writer and the killer were, without a doubt, the same person. They had his DNA. They had his taunting words. They had his arrogance preserved in an evidence bag. The one thing they didn't have was his name. The DNA profile was run through the criminal database at the time, but came up empty. The killer wasn't in the system. And just like that, the case hit a wall again. For decades, the letter and the DNA it held sat in an evidence locker, a silent testament to a killer's pride, in a case frozen in time. It's incredible, isn't it? How a single piece of evidence, a tiny mistake, can change everything, even decades later. It's the dedication of investigators and the march of science that bring these stories to light. If you find true crime stories like this compelling, take a second to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps me continue to share these important cases. For 32 years, there was silence. Anna Kane's case grew colder. Her children grew up without their mother, her family living with the pain of not knowing who was responsible. The DNA was a dead end, a key without a lock. The National DNA Database, CODIS, was established in the 90s, but it only works if a suspect's DNA is already in the system. Anna's killer wasn't. Then everything changed. A revolutionary new technique started cracking cold cases wide open. Forensic genetic genealogy is the same technology that famously helped catch the Golden State Killer. Investigators knew this could finally be the key to solving Anna's murder. In 2022, the Pennsylvania State Police sent the DNA profile, the one from the crime scene and the taunting letter, to Parabon Nanolabs, a specialized lab in Virginia. Parabon experts uploaded that decades-old genetic data to public genealogy databases, the same kind of websites people use to build their family trees. They weren't looking for the killer himself, they were looking for his relatives. It's painstaking work. Genealogists got matches to distant cousins, second, third, even fourth cousins, who had all voluntarily uploaded their DNA from there. They started building out family trees, working backwards to find common ancestors and then forward through generations. They were basically reverse engineering a family tree to pinpoint the one person who was the source of that crime scene DNA. Slowly, through a web of interconnected families, the branches of the tree all started pointing to one name: Scott Lamar Grimm. Scott Grimm was from the same area where Anna Kane was killed. At the time of the murder in 1988, he was 26 years old, the exact same age as his victim. He had lived his life completely under the radar, never once being married, being named a suspect, or even a person of interest. His name was nowhere in the case file, yet the genetic tree pointed directly at him. But there's a dark, frustrating twist. As investigators started to build their case, they discovered that Scott Grimm had died of natural causes in 2018 at the age of 58. He lived his life and died without ever being held accountable. Justice in this form of a trial in a prison cell was now impossible. Still, police needed to be 100% certain. They needed a direct DNA sample from Grimm to make the final confirmation. Investigators managed to get a direct sample post-mortem, and the results were conclusive. The DNA from Scott Grimm was a perfect match to the DNA on Anna Kane's clothing and the saliva on the envelope he had mailed 32 years earlier. As police looked into Grimm's past, they found another chilling detail. In 2002, 12 years after mailing the letter about Anna's murder, he was arrested for harassment. And what was the nature of that harassment? Mailing threatening and intimidating letters to a former business partner. It was a clear pattern of behavior, using letters as a weapon to taunt and intimidate. It was a habit that would, from beyond the grave, ultimately expose him. After 34 years, the case of Anna Jean Kane was officially solved. Scott Grimm was her killer. At a press conference, Berks County District Attorney John Adams put it perfectly, saying, "I know in some respects the fact that he is deceased, he would never face justice as we all would have hoped, but we solved it. We gave some closure to the family." And that's the complicated reality of so many of these solved cold cases. We get the who, but the why is often lost forever. Because Scott Grimm died before he was caught, Anna's family will never know why he targeted her on what happened in her final moments. Those answers died with him. His arrogance led him to write a letter, and science used that letter to find him. But it couldn't make him answer for his crime. Anna's story is a tragedy, but it's also a powerful reminder of how time and science can deliver answers. It's a message to killers who think they've gotten away with it. Your biggest mistake might just be waiting for you in an evidence locker, sealed with your own DNA. And for the victims and their families, it shows that even after decades of silence, there is always hope for truth.
Blood on the grass won't wash away. Undetected footprints hidden in the mud.